and welcome to the Creation Dream Machine. I'm your host, Texas Bob Warren.
This is in London for 1965. It's LA and the mods are back.
The punks say, in order to change things, you have to destroy first.
Recently, the punk phenomenon began surfacing from the underground club. Why?
Acceptance by the people in their group.
And like across the street before when I come over to find you guys was just like, wow.
Now I can see it.
That's why I banged on the soundtrack just to put me in the mood.
What? I think I'd like to zoom in a little bit between. Sometimes you have to.
When I buy my mansion, I'll invite the world to stay, so everyone can see a picture of Dorian Gray. Listen by the river, drinking lemon tea.
Oh my God, Bob! Howard! Hey,
Thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you for being a part of this.
It's going to be surreal because I've not been in here since the last night of the club, right? So inside this building, let's see these would have been like the double doors we did band loading and out. Stage would have been right over there, and then this was all red. The whole place was sort of red and black, and these were like wooden doors here too, like same place, double wooden red Spanish red doors. And then this would have been open just like this. This is when you come in, and then this ticket booth. The absence of rats for some reason. I don't know what the problem is, Ashley. Did you get rid of the rats, Ashley? That's it.
Howard Paar. Hello, Howard.
Hello, Bob. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, my friend. Thanks so much for being on the show.
You got me in this space for the first time since the club closed. So thank you.
Oh, it's truly just so wonderful to have you here.
Thanks, mate. Good to see you. I'm so excited for the show too. I love what you and Al are up to.
Thank you. Yeah, so Howard, as a London native, relocated to LA in the late 70s. As a record label executive, he has worked with an array of legendary musicians, such as The Clash, as well as The Specials, Jimmy Cliff, Lana Del Rey, Psychedelic Furs, and The Cure. Oh my God, Howard. Wonderful. He's just released his second book, Top Ranking. Now, starting us off, Howard, coming from London, how did you perceive the music scene in LA?
Well, coming initially, I left right at the height of punk and all that excitement, change, and everything you kind of wanted. And when you got here, it was actually like getting in a fucking time machine in a not a good one. Like on the radio, it was Led Zeppelin, Fleetwood Mac.
The Eagles.
The Eagles, oh God. And then all those horrible bands with city names, Kansas, Boston.
Oh.
It was really horrible, musically. I mean, in terms of what was on the radio, until you sort of immerse a bit more and see what's going on around it,
Okay. You established the On Club, which is where we are now on Silverlake. Yeah. So what set the On Club apart from other venues?
Well, the great thing about LA at the time was all the UK bands were coming here and they were playing the Whiskey or the Roxy mostly. The Whiskey in particular was a great club. It was like 2 shows a night, and you'd have everyone, Ramones, from the US side of it, Ramones would play. You had, everyone played the Whiskey though, and every great English band at the time, other than the Clash, who played the Santa Monica Civic, pretty much everyone else was playing these great small clubs. And the thing was, though, you'd go in there, and let's just say, we'll use the Specials as an example, but or whoever, could be anyone, Elvis Costello. And the show would be great. It was a great setup, great club, but some fucking hippie sound man would be playing like the Doobie Brothers. You walk in there and you're hearing this fucking outdated shit. And you know, you got in there like, obviously it was a sort of amphetamine era, right? You're like wired up, ready to go, and you're like hearing this stuff, it just killed your buzz, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So with the club, once I'd seen the specials and started to get the catalyst for doing a ska and soul thing, I decided what I wanted to do here was to just do one band a night and then play records the rest of the night. And it would be ska, soul, you know, bit of vintage, you know, bit of vintage ska as well as the two-tone thing, which was really the catalyst in a lot of in every respect for seeing the idea of how to do it. And then the band would play 2 sets a night, but no support bands, just one band that were great, that fit what we were doing, and then play records the rest of the night. So that was what was different. You know, a lot of the smaller clubs around town, and we were small. I mean, this place is tiny.
Yeah.
You know, probably a third of the size of the Whiskey, but which was not huge in and of itself. But they'd have 6 bands on. It was like trying to get people in the bar, and it was all mishmash bills. So I was like, let's just do something that's focused and different, you know.
Oh, and with the On Club, you also kind of played like dance hall. And,
absolutely. Clint Eastwood,
Blue
General
Beat.
Saint, all that. You know, we'd play the two-tone thing was the sort of forward-thinking, social political stuff that I loved because it had sort of, it felt a little bit, because obviously I've been here a minute by then, and this was like 79 heading into 80 when we opened in May 80. A lot of the punk stuff had got a bit identikit, you know, the clothes, all of it just felt that way.
And then it became post-punk as well, didn't it? It kind of like moved
I
into...
mean, there was a lot of great stuff came out of England, but in LA at that moment, like there was a really great, very diverse, sort of playful, punky bunch of bands in LA. That I came to, as I got to know a lot of these people, I saw it was a different thing from punk in London because they didn't have the same stuff going on. You know what I mean? London was in a horror show at the time with, you know, power strikes, conservative government, you know, letter bombs. I mean, it was there, and they weren't having that. But there was a whole other set of aspects that you dealt with growing up here. I didn't understand at the time, so I was initially a little bit like, "What is this?" But as I got into it, it was a great scene, and by the time the club was getting ready to open, you'd got this really sort of misogynistic, hardcore scene where a lot of the fans, I mean, I can't speak to all the bands, some of the bands were good bands, especially as you look back on it. In the moment, I was just like, it was like a bunch of kids who had been playing high school football, jocks, who suddenly wanted to be punks. I thought it was horrible, you know what I mean? And so this was all just a reaction away from it. You know, what we were doing here.
Yeah, so, I mean, you're saying coming from London, you're saying was it a three-day week and all the rubbish that was piled high with, with all with rats.
Yeah,
you know? You know this?
That was the only similarity. There were rats, there were plenty of rats in the On Club.
Yeah, so like with the On Club, how was between London and LA, how had this impacted the musical relationship between like London and LA?
I think the great thing was when you looked at the surface of LA, and you know, look, a lot of people get very superficial impressions of LA, which is obviously the first one you get till you start spending time. And I'd spent time here by that point. Apart from the radio that was really awful and these bigger concerts and the mainstream of it all, what you'd see at those Whiskey Roxy shows was all the outsider kids who would connect to the bands, you know, as the Psychedelic Furs were starting to come through, you know, the Only Ones were playing, and I mean, you know, band after band. And that LA connection was, they always connected to what was going on. And this goes back, you know, I mean, I would talk to people who were sort of grew up the same kind of period I did, and they'd all been into like Bowie and Roxy music in a way that, you know, especially in Roxy Music's case, the mainstream America never got into until like Avalon, but they'd all grown up that way, Velvet Underground. And so I think LA and London, or UK really in general, there was always that connection, and those bands were really well received here. And you know, I'm to a degree in New York, but I think there was a real love with LA for those bands of that era, and an understanding.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They certainly weren't on the radio, these bands, you know what I mean? So it was a really cool era to be here, even if what was really going on was in the UK musically. experiencing it here with all these kids was a blast. You know, we had a good time.
Yeah, and having someone like Rodney Bingenheimer who
Yeah.
championed
Yeah.
like Bowie and a
Yeah.
lot of the punk and
Yeah.
kind of playing them on K-Rock.
Yeah, yeah. Rodney had the one show every Sunday night, and that was the only place you'd hear that sort of music, you know. And he'd interview the Germs or do a Go-Go's and those sort of bands. The bands that I actually loved at the time were those. I loved the Germs. I loved the Go-Go's.
Yeah.
And
A backstage pass. Did you?
Backstage Pass, yeah. That's
yeah,
right.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. Yeah, we got him in the book.
Yeah, and Darby crashed the Germs as well.
Yeah, Derby.
Darby.
Yeah, Derby. That's anyway, another story.
So,
right?
like,
But, yeah.
Howard, so like, which other bands did you book at the On Club?
Well, in the early days, it was really focused on ska and soul. And to be honest, when we started, there was only one LA ska band, the Box Boys, who were great. So I lent in on the soul stuff as well with Gino Washington, Gino Washington was here at the time. We got him to play Marsha Hunt, soul things like that. And then gradually the scene for that music evolved here and grew as we were growing. And we'd have reggae bands, There was one great band, the Babylon Warriors, bands that you wouldn't have heard of much. And then the Untouchables formed out of the club. There were kids who'd come down, listen to records, and were inspired to start a club. As we sort of evolved on and got involved in other things, there was a variety of bands. Lydia Lunch came down one night. And she's like, I'm going to play my new band. It's going to play their first shit. This was when she was about getting ready to do Eight-Eyed Spy. And she's like, she showed up outside one night and she's like, been asked to play the Whiskey, but I think I'm going to play here. I'm like, you are? And she goes, yeah, I've got a new band. I was like, all right. Stuff like that. We started to do some of the New York bands, I mean, I didn't know this so much at the time, but a lot of people were saying to me, there was some things came out with around the book and other stuff attendant to it, that a lot of the New York bands loved playing here because it was more street than what they were used to in LA. Yeah. So like the Ray Beats, Flesh Tones, and then other bands like Delta 5 played.
Delta 5, yeah. Okay. James Chance.
Yeah. There was, a variety of things. And then, some of the guys from The Clash and The Specials got up one night. Excuse me, I beg your pardon. The Clash and the English Beat got up after a Palladium show and came down here and got up on stage. Stuff like that would happen, which was obviously kind of perfect for me, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Did Gloria Jones ever pop down?
No, I don't think so. I would have noticed. Although a lot of people, there were people I'd find out literally years later used to go, and I never paid attention because we didn't comp celebrities. Mm-hmm. It was like maybe if some kid was broke and didn't have the money or whatever, but we had no celebrity list and we didn't comp record company people. I just wanted none of it. So, but like Jodie Foster used to come, Lawrence Fishburne sort of post, just doing.
It's like Apocalypse Now.
Exactly, just done
like
it. Yeah, he was still called Larry then. Yeah. I think he was an early underage kid getting in the club.
Yeah,
you know
really
what I mean? Pretty much. So yeah, good mix.
Well, I was saying, like with your novel, it is very immersive. When one reads your novel, it truly feels like one is transported back to that time.
Thank you.
It really is. It's just, it's such a joy to read, and you're just kind of like, you can't put it down. It's just like you're just wanting to read the next chapter and the next chapter, and you feel for these characters, all these beautiful characters.
Thank you so much.
So much empathy. Like you really just such an amazing character, with the exception of Mr. Tony.
Yeah. It's Tony.
Yeah.
It's Tony. Yeah, I mean, look, the idea when I wrote it was to just write. I mean, look, it's a fictional story in an absolute authentic, setting, and a lot of real people in it, obviously, as well. But I wanted it written like it was the moment. So there's no looking back, going, oh, gee, look, it was so weird back then because no one had cell phones or no one took photographs or whatever, other than Polaroids. It was very much write it in the moment so that if you wanted to read it, you're going to get a taste of what it felt like in the moment with no filter.
Yeah, it's like you have like the Hollywood landmarks, the old beautiful Hollywood and TV landmarks that play a part in this, as well as what's going on with the punk scene, and it's just like truly magnificent book.
Thank you. I
Howard,
mean, punk and noir mix very. You
Yes.
know, it's a perfect
Yes.
marriage, right?
Yes.
I mean, you know, you've got the sort of doomed outsiders, anti-authoritarian, femme fatales. I mean, it's
Femme
all.
fatale.
You know, I think there was a lot of empathy with punk to those things, and especially it's Los Angeles. You know, and that was the luckiest thing for me ever was arriving here before so many of those places went. You know. Especially in a kind of time when LA was really sort of pretty downhill, you know, it's like, you know, like in the book, there's people partying in illegal parties at Errol Flynn's old estate. I mean, it was a lot of these places were very run down.
Okay.
But great, because you could just...
These huge mansions, and people were just
Yeah.
like, you know,
Yeah.
were they actually like kind of putting on shows at the mansion?
No, it was all very one-off. And there wasn't, you know, like the Errol Flynn estate was pretty messed, it was pretty damaged, you know what I mean? It was...
What was Rory, did Rory kind of, because I think he had a daughter named Rory Flynn?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know any deal. I mean, I just remember
was a
going
punk as well.
there. Yeah, I mean, maybe that was the access point. I actually don't know. I
Yeah.
just went, and it
Yeah,
was like
yeah.
surreal in
Wow.
the best way, you know. And then you got like the Sunset Tower that was kind of like a crash pad, more or less. At that point, it's was a huge iconic building and sort of been restored now and sort of is in its own way again. But in that minute, the doors were hanging off it. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. So, with reflecting on your career, what experiences do you hold dearest?
Look, I've been really lucky. I mean, coming to LA was like proved you can just sort of imagine, dream up a life, as Bowie taught us. You know what I mean, and live it. And so it's all been really mythical. I tend not to look back or really reflect unless I'm writing books. You know, truthfully, what I'm most excited about normally is what I'm about to do or what I'm doing right now. And you know, I've had such lovely relationships with some, you know, not just great artists, great filmmakers, and I mean, look, all of it I really cherish and appreciate. I'm very grateful for, but I don't really have those. You know what I mean? It's hard to just sort of pick a handful of moments, but yeah, the now is always good.
Now is
look
good.
forward.
Yeah.
You know.
if I could just ask the question regarding our mutual friend Alan McGee.
There's something I cherish that meeting.
Yes. When did you connect in LA?
Alan and I met in 1989, going into 90, when I was at Polygram Records.
Okay.
And Alan was at that point doing a lot of licensing deals for creation artists with US companies. And the House of Love had actually signed to Mercury, Polygram, it was Phonogram, Fontana actually, excuse me, just
Mercury,
Dave Bay. So Alan was managing them as well. So that's how Alan and I met, and we just were like instant, you know what I mean? It was just
Kindred
like,
spirits.
Absolutely. I
That's
love
nice.
the House of Love. I mean, obviously everything on creation got me through the 90s. I mean, you know, a lot of the bands are on the label I worked at, which was a wonderful experience, but you know, the creation music was where my heart was, you know what I mean? Everything from all of them. My Bloody Valentine, and of course Alan's some of the stuff with Jesus and Mary Chain. I mean, he couldn't, it's like mirror taste. I mean, he created, you know, opportunities for artists I continue to love. Going on to Primals.
Going into Primals, yeah,
Scream. Yeah, and those guys. I've been trying to get a film together, do with them for so long.
with
One of
Andrew?
these days we're
Yeah.
going to pull it off, you know? Yeah.
You know, it's interesting
Andrew.
how everything's kind of come together, like with what's just down the road. There's like the MBV kind of release outside the Silverlake Lounge.
Oh.
So right above it, there's, you know.
It's genius. I know, it's really different here. I mean, it's very different here. But then some of those places, like the Los Globos joint across the street was always there.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm glad this space is still here. I mean, that's what I love, repurposing of Los Angeles architecture rather than tearing it down, you know, and it was great. It was a fun time.
Yeah.
Someone showed me a picture. Andy Warhol shot outside the club one night. I didn't even know that till about 6 months ago, but there's some pictures in his archives of it. So you never know who was watching, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, do you have any dream projects or something that you're really excited about and that upcoming?
I'm definitely starting on another novel, and There's actually been, like, this is total Hollywood because we live in Hollywood, right? But there's been some really interesting talk with some fascinating people about doing a series based on top rankings. So if we could do it authentically, that would be a dream. You know what I mean? It's like the music business has never been portrayed particularly authentically for the most part. And I'd love to do like a noir up. That would be fun. So we'll see what happens, you know?
Yeah, brilliant. Well, Howard, can you let our viewers know where we can find your book?
Yeah, look, if you're places where you've got independent bookshops, please order it from them. It came out US May 11th, UK May 27th, so it's around anywhere you want. If you've got to get it from the obvious Amazon-y type places, that's all available to you. But yeah, or the Redbird book site too. You know, they've got a space you can get it from. So pretty much anywhere, but buy independent bookshops, you know, they need help right now.
And it's a brilliant book. Please, everyone out there, get the book. You can't put it down. It's a fantastic book, a magic book. Howard,
Bob,
thank you so much.
coming from you, mate. Thank you.
Yeah,
This
thank
was a
you.
blast.
And thank you so much for being a guest on the Creation Dream Machine
Oh,
TV
this is
show.
an honor, and you did it here. I mean, it's all just, you know, I'm just, yeah, it's good all around by me. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you, everyone,
Thank
viewers.
you guys. Cheers.
And for Ashley here
Yeah, Ashley.
at Candid Home, making it all happen. Thank you so much, Ashley. Okay. Thank you, everyone. We say goodbye for now. The Creation Dream Machine. CRE DRM TV 0009. Thanks, everyone. Howard Paar.
Cheers. Thank you, guys.
Out of all the subcultures that appeal to today's kids, parents, you're going to be happy to know that there's still one that has an optimistic outlook about the future. They're called the mod.
Now, with a look at where the punkers buy their bizarre clothes, and we'll find out what role the movement might play in the future.
Texas Folklore!
All right, go.
We're here outside the Silverlake Lounge, where on July 26, 2021, we're going to have the Creation launch with jugs, magic wands, and United Ghosts. I have here with me the legendary Howard Paar, music promoter for the On Club, as well as multi-award winning music supervisor and an Academy member. Here we are together.
And a lover of Creation Dream Machine,
Alan
Texas
McGee.
Bob, Alan McGee.
You're going to be able to get all this? Don't hurt yourself.